Art Paul was the legendary founding art director of Playboy magazine. For almost 30 years, he established the look of the magazine and revolutionized the relationship between art and publishing, championing many local artists, including Ed Paschke. Paul died in April of this year, but a new documentary celebrates his life and work. Here is a brief clip.
My name is Arthur Paul, Art Paul. I have to be an artist.
Art Paul is legendary in both the world of art and the world of ideas.
I don't think everybody knows Art Paul, but they should.
Joining us now is Jamie Ceasar, producer of Art Paul of Playboy, the man behind the bunny. She has spent the last 4 years putting this documentary together, and Ceasar is a longtime producer and writer, including for this station, and her work has won multiple Emmys. Jamie, good to see you. And we just heard somebody say, was that the Chicago Film Festival guy who said everybody should know who Art Paul is?
Oh, no, that was Tom Stabler, who worked for Art Paul. Yeah.
I see. Well, why should more people know about Art Paul? What made him so special?
Well, he was a humble, wonderful Chicagoan. He did so much at Playboy magazine, where he was the founding art director, and he created the iconic Playboy bunny logo. But he did much more than that. He was an innovator in hiring fine artists as illustrators, which was really revolutionary at the time. He did something really fun on the magazine cover, which was he did a game called Hide the Bunny, and people would love to find the bunny every...
In the composition of the cover, there would be a bunny, and then you'd have to sort of find it.
Right, so that was fun, and hired world-class artists. He was an artist in his own right.
Well, we have a clip that references how Chicago was booming in the 50s when Playboy was founded, and let's take a look at that.
From the very start, Hugh Hefner's Playboy magazine was nourished by Chicago's booming culture in the 1950s. This cultural transformation likely had an influence on Hugh Hefner and the content of his magazine. But no one influenced the look of the magazine more than Art Paul, the founding art director of Playboy.
Jamie, what does an art director do?
The art director is concerned with the look and feel of the magazine, where things are going, how it's going to look, where an illustration is going to go, who's going to do the illustration, the overall arching look of the magazine.
I see, so it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is an artist, him or herself.
That might be correct, but not in Art Paul's case. In Art Paul's case, he is really a Renaissance man, artist, type of artist, in that he's a poet, a composer, and an artist, and did his own work for many years.
Well, as we mentioned, he famously created the Playboy bunny logo, and here's a brief clip from the film that describes its significance.
It took only 1 hour for Paul to sketch the famous rabbit profile with the cocked ear and tuxedo tie.
It was incredibly important to everything about the reputation and the visual power of the magazine. Art Paul sat down and designed the best logo any magazine in the history of the world has ever had or ever will have. My God, it started with a logo. Anybody could do photographs of women, but not everybody could do that goddamn logo.
You know, I once interviewed Christy Hefner, and she said that the Playboy logo, in terms of recognizability around the world, was second only to, like, maybe Coca-Cola or something like that.
It's a global logo that everyone recognizes.
Another innovation that he was responsible for, as we mentioned, was hiding the bunny logo on the cover. And just remind us where we saw the bunny logo on those covers.
Oh, well, it could be in like someone would do an ear like this.
Right, there we go.
Right here, yeah. It could be right in the lips. It could be on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
It could be, anywhere. You know, they just incorporated it so that you would really have to look around and play the game, and that was part of another innovation of Art Paul's, was that he wanted people to interact with the magazine, and it was sort of interactive before its time.
And speaking of the beginning of Playboy, the very first person on the cover of the very first Playboy was Marilyn Monroe, and here Art Paul describes how he created that first cover.
When the first issue of Playboy hit the newsstands, Arthur Paul was incorporating modern design concepts into the look of the magazine. Hefner was developing the editorial content. One of the first things he did was to obtain photos of one of the most famous women for the cover of the premiere issue.
Hef got me this Marilyn Monroe picture. She's sitting on top of a car, and it was a ticker tape parade, I believe, in New York. And so I blocked out that stuff. Got the white background, but keeping the feeling of the big city. So it was simple and it was strong.
You alluded to the fact that he originated the concept of bringing fine artists into a magazine. Again, just repeat some of the artists that local artists.
Ed Paschke, Roger Brown, Carl Worsom. He worked with Shel Silverstein, Seymour Rasofsky, and in the case of Ed Paschke, he was a struggling artist, and perhaps would not have been an artist if not for his paycheck from Playboy that really allowed him to become an artist.
And you were telling me off camera that Playboy paid these artists well,
Yeah.
which is not often the case
Right.
with people who produce fine art.
Not today, that's for sure.
So one of the things that he introduced was the idea of participatory art in graphics. What does that mean?
Well, that was really interesting. It was a concept with a die cut where it would be one story on one page, and when you turned the page, it would be an aha experience, and would change the story. It would be an exclamation point, and create another message.
I see, and that's what we're looking. That's what we're looking at
Right.
here.
Right. So they're kissing. Now it's another person, and that other guy is pissed off, right? So
Angry with.
Right. So and he did that once with Henry Kissinger. He had there was a illustration of Henry Kissinger, and he was very regal and looked like a general. And then you turn the page, and it's Henry Kissinger's face, but he looks like a Macy's balloon. So it really changes the message in a quick second.
What made him such a visionary, Art Paul?
I think he was so creative. He gave his artists and art directors creative freedom, which was very unusual at the time. He had all these innovations in the magazine. He brought his influence of the Bauhaus, where he went to school at ID, and made the magazine look beautiful. And it was really, really beautiful and great looking, and that was...
Did he have any reservations about the nude content in the magazine?
You know, he particularly worked with the graphics. Hefner mostly worked with the women in the cartoons, and he was called the professor there, and he kept his face down and he worked on art, and he was consumed with art all the time and creating it. And he created it his whole life, and he was really lucky in that he got to do that his whole entire life, and was an artist on his own, and had gallery openings in the last few years.
He, at the end of his life, his eyesight was very poor, and as someone who was such a creative person, how did that affect him?
Well, he got up every day and went to the studio, and he created artwork, and that was his passion, and that's where his love lied, besides with his wife, who really encouraged him, Suzanne, to create art, because that's what he really lived for, his wife and his art.
Jamie Ceasar, thank you so much. It's a fun documentary to watch, and learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Art Paul of Playboy, the man behind the bunny, premieres on Sunday evening at the Chicago International Film Festival. Details are on our website.